Although divisions were less important in Britain than in other countries as a result of the marginal status of the CP, the British left found itself in a difficult situation. The Labour Party was in power and maintained close ties with the United States. Many ordinary Labour MPs, particularly those on the left of the party, hoped that it would be possible to force the government to participate in the creation of a third force between the United States and the Soviet Union. In 1946, many opposed the creation of a military alliance with the United States. Yet by the late 40s, much of the left wing of the party, including the influential Keep Left group, had changed its position and reluctantly accepted the need for an alliance with the United States. The main opponents of this shift, the openly pro-Soviet Connie Ziliakas and John Platts Mills, were expelled from the party along with two other pro-Soviet MPs. So Orwell's desire to defend Britain from communism must be seen as part of a broader movement within the British left away from wartime unity with the Soviet Union. Orwell's position was hardly surprising given his record of opposition to the Soviet Union as well as to international and domestic communism. He constantly criticised the absence of real democracy in the USSR, had opposed aspects of its foreign policy, such as the agreement concluded with Nazi Germany in 1939. He'd been marked by his experience of fighting with the POUM forces in Spain. The POUM had been denounced as Trotskyists by Spanish communists and had been accused of being in league with fascists. Spanish communists were not simply waging war against Franco's forces, but were also carrying out more or less covert activities against the POUM. So Orwell had seen communists in action and had been in physical danger because of his active involvement with the POUM. He also had a long history of acrimonious relations with British communists. He criticised the party's changes in strategy in line with Soviet policy. In 1935, the CP had officially abandoned the sectarian isolation of class against class in favour of the broad unity of the Popular Front. In 1939, it switched from support for what it deemed to be an anti-fascist war to opposition to an imperialist war, once the Soviet Union had expressed its position. And in 1941, the CP swung in favour of the war when the Soviet Union was attacked and declared war on Germany. Orwell had also attacked the party for its role in the international brigades in Spain. In Wigan Pier, he famously presented communists as being middle-class eccentrics. It must also be remembered that Orwell had been riled by the party's attitudes to his writing. His books had come in for fierce criticism in reviews printed in the pages of the Daily Worker, the CP daily newspaper. Harry Pollitt, the party's General Secretary, wrote of Orwell's description of the working class in the Road to Wigan Pier, I quote, "One thing I'm certain of, and it is this: if Mr. Orwell could only hear what left book circles will say about his book, then he would make a resolution never to write again on any subject that he does not understand." Homage to Catalonia was described as, I quote, "an honest picture of the sort of mentality that toys with revolutionary romanticism, but shies violently at revolutionary discipline. It should be read as a warning." Finally, Daily Worker readers were told that 1984 had nothing to do with literature, but was simply anti-Soviet, anti-communist propaganda. And that, again I quote, "the tale is enlivened by occasional salacious passages, like currants in a rather dry plum duff." Interestingly, some British communists and Marxists continued to excoriate him many years after his death. The book Orwell, Views from the Left, was produced by Lawrence and Wishart, the party publishers, in 1984, and contained fierce criticism of his novels and his portrayal of the Spanish Civil War. So, like many others, Orwell was trapped in the bipolar world of the Cold War, and was forced to align himself with one side or the other. His political beliefs and experiences led him to side with Britain and the United States. However, even before the end of the Second World War, he had spoken of the possibility of impending conflict with the USSR, and had stated to the publisher Victor Galantz that, and I quote, "In case of war breaking out, if one were compelled to choose between Russia and America, I would always choose America." In fact, Orwell's relations with the IRD go to the very heart of his politics. Despite being, arguably, an internationalist socialist, as his involvement in the Spanish Civil War suggested, he was very much a patriot. Even his socialism owed more to Morris than to Marx. He had for a while been a member of the peculiarly British Independent Labour Party. The ILP had sought to develop an indigenous brand of left-wing politics between the social democracy of the Labour Party and the Marxism-Leninism of the CP. Although it saw itself as a revolutionary party, its pragmatic, empirical socialism was at odds with the scientific pretensions of Marxism, the language and concepts of which Orwell deemed to be distinctly foreign. Yet, as Philip Bounds wrote in his recent book, Orwell and Marxism, some similarities did exist between Orwell and the CP. At times, both had an almost workerist outlook on politics, celebrating the qualities of the working class. However, they did have different approaches and different objectives. The CP attempted to create a narrative of popular struggle against oppression, reaching back to the peasants' revolt. It linked this to the contemporary class struggle and to admiration for the Soviet Union, where the working class was thought to have come to power. Orwell, on the other hand, lauded the gentleness, the decency of the working class, its introverted nature, and its patriotism. The latter was, of course, compared favourably with the hostilities of Britain and sympathy for the USSR, expressed by what Orwell termed the deracinated left-wing intellectuals, the very people he included in his list. In other words, he praised the specific features of the British working class that set it apart from other sections of society and from other countries, while the internationalism of the communist movement implied uniformity resulting from the universalism of the class struggle. Orwell's internationalism was based on respect of national peculiarities. His list can therefore be interpreted as an attempt to protect the working class and its way of life from unpatriotic intellectuals who wish to impose a foreign model of socialism on Britain. So to conclude very briefly, the late 40s finally saw Orwell swimming with the tide of the British left. He was no longer a troublesome outsider, as his hostility to communism and the Soviet Union were widely shared. Whether his collaboration with the British state would have been condoned by his allies at the time is, of course, open to debate. 50 years later, the revelations about Orwell's list led him again to be seen as an outsider, a situation he might have been more comfortable with, and would certainly have been more used to. Thank you.